Um, Picture a baseball batter stepping up to the plate. The pitcher winds up, throws this wild curveball that is just, way outside the strike zone, and the batter just swings out of their shoes anyway.
Right, it's just a totally reckless swing.
Yeah, exactly. And then comes a pitch in the dirt. They swing at that too, high and inside. Another frantic swing. It's honestly exhausting just to watch.
Because you know they're not going to hit anything like that.
Right. Because if you swing at absolutely every single pitch that comes your way, you are going to strike out, you're going to pull a muscle, and you are definitely not going to help your team win the game.
You lose all your power because you've completely abandoned any sense of strategy. Like every swing just becomes this automatic reflex rather than an actual, conscious choice.
And yet, welcome to our deep dive today, where we are looking at how this exact same exhausting dynamic has just completely taken over how we communicate with each other.
Oh, it really has.
I mean, think about it. We are constantly told to speak our truth, or to push back, or to never let a single comment slide. But our mission today is to explore a fundamental and honestly highly overlooked aspect of truly effective communication for you, the listener.
Which is knowing when to just not engage.
Exactly, knowing when not to engage. And to guide us through this, we are looking at some brilliant insights from Lenora Billings-Harris.
Yes, her work is just incredible here. She's an internationally recognized authority, an author, and a professional speaker who has spent over 35 years in the trenches of corporate inclusion.
Wow, 35 years. That's a massive amount of experience.
It really is. And she spent that time figuring out exactly why our critical, difficult conversations keep failing. As the founder of the Critical Voices Initiative, she's uniquely positioned to dissect the nuances of these interactions across both the public and private sectors.
Let's unpack this right away.
Yeah.
Because on the surface, stepping back feels almost countercultural right now. We've been conditioned to think that silence equals surrender.
Yeah, that if you don't fight back, you're giving up.
Right. If someone says something wrong or controversial or just irritating, the immediate reflex is to jump in. So how does Billings-Harris help us reframe stepping back as an active, strategic choice for you, rather than just, giving up?
So to understand why restraint is so powerful, we first have to look at the environment we are operating in today. I mean, we live in a world that practically demands constant reaction from us.
Oh, totally. Everything is an outrage cycle.
Exactly. Think about your daily life, whether you were sitting at a boardroom meeting or scrolling through an online discussion thread or even just sitting around the dinner table.
Yeah, the tension is just always there.
It is. The expectation, which is driven by everything from social media algorithms to just modern corporate culture, is that every single statement deserves an immediate response.
It's kind of like playing conversational whack-a-mole.
Oh, that's a perfect way to put it.
Right, like a point pops up, smash, you hit it down with your counter-argument. Another opinion pops up, smash, you reflexively hit that one too. But you're not actually going anywhere. You're just sweating and swinging a giant mallet.
And playing that game of whack-a-mole does something very specific to our brains. The psychologist Herbert Simon actually coined a brilliant phrase for this. He said, "A wealth of information creates a poverty of attention."
A poverty of attention. Wow, that hits hard.
Doesn't it? And the research applies that concept directly to our modern conversations. When every single comment triggers an immediate reflexive response, our attention just completely shifts.
We stop listening, basically.
Exactly. We stop trying to understand what the other person's actually saying, and we pivot entirely toward defending our own positions.
Oh, I do that all the time. I'm just sitting there formulating my brilliant rebuttal while they are still talking.
We all do it. We spend our cognitive bandwidth loading up our next argument, so the conversation stops being an exchange of ideas and simply becomes noise.
Just two people monologuing at each other.
Right. It might feel like you are communicating, but you aren't making any progress because neither party has the attention span available to actually process new information.
Well, wait, let me push back on that for a second. If we are just defending our positions in the sea of noise, isn't there a risk that by staying quiet, we just let bad ideas win?
That's the fear, right?
Yeah. Like if someone says something awful at Thanksgiving dinner, or a colleague makes a clearly dismissive comment in a meeting, and I just sit there practicing this restraint, my silence feels exactly like an endorsement. How do we differentiate between just noise and something that genuinely needs our attention?
Well, restraint does not mean apathy. Think about a recent tense meeting or an online thread you read. Picture the dynamic. Everyone is talking, Everyone is typing furiously, but absolutely no one is listening.
Just a total mess.
Right, that is the poverty of attention in action. Participating in that just adds to the noise. But Billings-Harris draws a very clear line between stepping back from noise and stepping up to protect psychological safety.
Okay, so there is an imperative to speak. We aren't just retreating to a mountaintop and taking a vow of silence.
No, not all. The research outlines specific scenarios where silence is actually harmful, where it allows problems to grow and fester.
So we are moving from the danger of overengagement to the absolute necessity of strategic engagement. Give me an example of what that looks like in the real world.
Sure. Let's say you are a leader observing a team meeting, and you notice that one specific team member is being consistently interrupted every time they try to speak.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that happen.
Or perhaps you're on a board and you hear dismissive comments directed at someone simply because they hold a different perspective. Or, to bring it back to your Thanksgiving example, family members using assumptions or stereotypes that undermine the trust of the group.
In those moments, silence feels really heavy. It feels, I don't know, complicated.
Because in those specific moments, silence unintentionally signals acceptance. If you don't speak up, you are implicitly validating that harmful behavior.
Right. Everyone assumes you agree with the person being awful because you didn't stop them.
Exactly. Speaking up in these specific instances protects both the targeted individual and the overall integrity of the group. When a leader addresses harmful behavior thoughtfully, they reduce the threat response in the room. They actively create psychological safety.
Let's dig into that mechanism for a second, because sometimes it feels like calling someone out is just going to create more tension, not less.
It depends entirely on how you do it. If you attack them, yeah, the tension skyrockets. But when you calmly enforce a boundary, you are actually regulating the nervous systems of everyone else in the room.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You are signaling to the group that the environment is predictable and that rules of respect apply, that physically lowers the collective cortisol levels in the room, even if the person being corrected feels a little, momentary spike of discomfort.
So it's really about recognizing when a boundary of respect has been crossed and stabilizing the room. And I noticed something really fascinating in Billings-Harris's material here. There's a very specific phrase suggested for these exact moments.
Yes, the help me understand approach.
Right. Help me understand what you mean. I love that. But it makes me wonder about the mechanics of it. Are we using that phrase to seek accountability, or is it more about just injecting a pause into a harmful dynamic?
If we connect this to the broader philosophy of the Critical Voices Initiative, the goal is actually both, and it's achieved through curiosity rather than confrontation. Think about what happens in the brain when someone makes an aggressive or dismissive comment.
Okay.
They're often operating out of their amygdala, which is the emotional center of the brain.
The fight or flight zone.
Exactly. By saying, help me understand what you mean, you aren't attacking them. You are asking them to explain their logic. This seemingly simple request forces their brain to literally switch gears.
Wait, really? Just that phrase?
Yes, because to answer you, they have to engage their prefrontal cortex, which is the logical reasoning part of the brain. You are mechanically pulling them out of an emotional reaction and forcing them to cognitively process their own words.
It's like holding up a mirror to their behavior rather than pointing a finger at them. You're forcing them to look at what they just unpacked rather than just yelling at them for bringing the baggage in the first place.
That's a great analogy. You are injecting a pause, demanding a level of accountability, and shifting a tense discussion back into a productive exchange.
So for you listening, the key takeaway here is developing the radar to recognize the difference between a minor conversational annoyance, like someone just being loud, and a genuine threat to psychological safety.
Precisely. When it's a threat to safety, your voice is absolutely required.
Okay, so we have to speak up when safety and integrity are on the line. And we use curiosity to force their prefrontal cortex to turn back on. But here is where it gets really messy in my head.
Uh-oh. Where's that?
What happens when you know you need to speak up, but the environment itself guarantees that doing so is going to completely backfire? Like, you just know that speaking up is going to throw gasoline on the fire.
Well, this brings us to the actual science of walking away and the psychology behind why pushing back so often fails. Because Billings-Harris points out that sometimes the conditions for a productive conversation simply do not exist.
Like when you're dealing with someone who doesn't even want to have a dialogue, they just want to be right.
Yes, exactly.
They're treating the conversation like a spectator sport, and they just need to win.
Or consider a situation where emotions are running incredibly high. When the physiological state of anger or extreme frustration takes over, logic literally leaves the room.
The amygdala is running the show again.
Right. The brain's threat detection center completely overrides the parts responsible for rational thought. So attempting a critical conversation in a crowded, chaotic meeting, or a highly public online thread, or a tense family dinner with an audience, it rarely, if ever, leads to insight.
It just leads to escalation. I mean, it's like trying to teach someone how to swim while they are actively drowning. You can shout instructions at them all you want, but they are panicking, they're flailing, and if you get too close, they are just going to pull you under with them.
That is painfully accurate. And there's a deep psychological mechanism at play here that explains why they flail. The late behavioral economist Amos Tversky did some foundational work in helping us understand cognitive biases, specifically confirmation bias.
Right. This is the idea that we subconsciously hunt for information that proves we are already right, and we just ignore anything that proves we are wrong.
Exactly. And Tversky's work showed that when people feel challenged or attacked, like when you push back against them in a heated moment, this bias doesn't just stay the same. It hardens, becomes this massive defensive shield.
So they just lock in.
They do. The amygdala perceives the opposing argument not as new information, but as a literal physical threat.
Wait, hold on. The brain reacts to an opposing opinion the same way it reacts to a physical danger? Like a predator jumping out of the bushes.
The physiological response is incredibly similar, yes. The heart rate spikes, adrenaline floods the system. In that state, the more you push with facts and logic, the more the other person digs their heels in. It is a predictable, biological human response known as the backfire effect.
So by continuing to argue, you are mathematically guaranteeing that they will believe their wrong idea even more strongly. That is wild.
It's entirely counterproductive.
Now, Billings-Harris calls the act of walking away in these moments strategic patience. But in practice, I have to ask, are we walking away to give them time to cool down and overcome that confirmation bias? Or are we simply doing it to protect our own energy and relationships from taking unnecessary damage?
The insight here is that it is fundamentally both. Walking away allows their emotional temperature to drop, giving their nervous system time to literally clear the adrenaline.
Which might open the door for actual reflection later on.
Exactly. But just as importantly, it protects you. It prevents us from wasting our finite energy on conversations that structurally and psychologically just cannot succeed in that specific moment.
Understanding the neuroscience of why people dig in is fascinating. I mean, it explains so much about the internet, for one thing.
Doesn't it, Jess?
But when you are in the heat of a frustrating moment, when your heart rate is up and someone just said something completely ridiculous to you, you need a quick, reliable way to decide whether to lean in or step back. You can't exactly run a psychological profile on them in real time.
No, you definitely can't. And that's why Billings-Harris provides a very simple 4-question decision test to run through your head before engaging.
Oh, this is the practical framework. Let's hear it.
Okay, so the first thing you have to figure out is if they actually want a dialogue, or if they're just practicing a monologue on you.
That's a massive filter right there. Are they asking questions or are they just delivering a speech? Because if they're just giving a speech, save your breath.
Precisely. The second filter is about the environment. Is this the right setting for a thoughtful conversation?
Because even if they do want to talk, if you're standing in a crowded hallway between meetings or you're in the comments section of a viral post, the setting is totally wrong. It's too public.
The audience effect changes everything. People start performing for the crowd rather than actually engaging with the idea.
Right.
So the third question goes back to your drowning swimmer analogy. Are emotions calm enough for curiosity to exist? If panic, anger, or extreme defensiveness is in the driver's seat, curiosity cannot be a passenger.
Curiosity is so fragile. The second people feel threatened, it just evaporates completely.
It really does. Which brings us to the final question. Will speaking up in this exact moment lead to understanding, or will it simply lead to escalation?
These 4 questions are a brilliant filter. Dialogue versus debate, the right setting, calm emotions, understanding versus escalation. But I have to push back again here.
Go for it.
Because this requires a massive amount of self-honesty from the person using it. Is there a danger that we might weaponize this framework?
What do you mean by weaponize?
Like, could I use, oh, the setting isn't quite right, or they don't seem perfectly calm, as a convenient excuse to just avoid a difficult conversation that I'm actually just afraid to have?
Yeah. That raises a very important point, and it's a trap that is super easy to fall into. But this is where Billings-Harris's final rule provides a safeguard.
Okay.
Walking away does not mean the issue disappears. Let me repeat that because it's crucial. It does not mean the issue disappears.
I see. So you aren't letting them off the hook permanently.
Exactly. It simply means you are consciously choosing a better time, a better place, or a better approach. It is walking away for now.
Right. For now. That's the key.
As the Critical Voices Initiative emphasizes, effective dialogue must begin with curiosity rather than certainty. Effective leaders, whether you lead a massive corporate team or just want to be a better communicator in your personal life, they balance the courage to confront issues with the discernment to know when to do it.
So it's about timing.
Yes. If you use the 4 questions to delay a conversation indefinitely, that's avoidance. If you use them to schedule a follow-up conversation when conditions are better, that is discernment.
So what does this all mean for you as we wrap up this deep dive today? We've covered a lot of ground, looking at over 3 decades of corporate inclusion research. We've learned that truly effective communication isn't just about mustering up the courage to speak your mind.
No, it's about actively fighting against that poverty of attention where everyone is just making noise.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the exact moments when your silence could cause harm or signal acceptance of toxic behavior.
And it's about understanding the deep-seated psychological realities of confirmation bias, recognizing that sometimes pushing back just causes people to dig in deeper because their brain interprets it as a physical threat.
Yeah, that blew my mind. So we have to use that 4-question test to practice strategic patience. Remember, true influence isn't measured by how frequently you respond to things. It is measured by how thoughtfully you choose your moments. The discipline to wait is every bit as important as the courage to speak.
The discipline to wait. That's really the core of Billings-Harris's message.
It is, and it really brings us back to that baseball batter we talked about at the very beginning. It takes incredible discipline to watch a pitch fly by, to keep the bat resting on your shoulder and wait for the one pitch you can actually hit.
It's the only way to play the long game.
Right. But I do want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over today. Something we haven't entirely resolved. If we all master this strategic patience and we just constantly walk away from every toxic, debate-obsessed person, what happens to them? Do they realize no one is swinging at their pitches and finally learn to regulate their communication? Or do they just end up totally isolated in an echo chamber, screaming at the walls because everyone thoughtful strategically walked away from them? Something to think about the next time you decide to leave an argument on the table.